People are still being very loud. I just start talking. The director of Artist Space is ceaselessly talking. Thank you, Jay, for hosting us. And thank you so much to James and to Lonely for inviting us, Naipo Books, to be the curator of the October-November season, which is 8 readings. This is the second reading. I hope you'll come back. Next week is Kevin Holden and Laura Moriarty, and then we have a lot of great gem-like readings through the fall. Nightboat Books, as you know, as many of you know, is turned 20. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary. We are having a big-ass party in Brooklyn the night of October 22nd, and the after party is only $20, and it's going to go all night, so I hope you'll check out our website and consider coming on out and supporting us, celebrating 20 years and looking to the next 20. And then if you get there by 10, I think there's a free toast. So check that out. And it's really an honor that Rodrigo Toscano is a distinguished guest in the Nightboat series. He's not an author, but he has been an important figure in poetry my whole time in New York. Looking at his career, I'm struck by its duration and sustained innovation, by the discipline and rigor of the work. The books have appeared consistently for 25 years. There are now more than a dozen, including most recently Whitman, Cannonball, Puebla, which will be coming from Omnidon in a matter of days, weeks? Okay, it's out but not here. It was a finalist for the National Poetry Series, the Cut Point from Counterpath a couple years ago, The Charm and the Dread from Fence in 22. Part of a poetic vision, one that constantly evolves and deepens. Rodrigo grew up in San Diego, which is a bit of a sleeper poetry town. I'm reminded of several other experimental poets from San Diego of a similar era, Jennifer Moxley, and of course the late Cole Heinowitz. In lieu of college, Toscano moved to San Francisco, where he discovered experimental poetry and began reading political theory. He was reading the language poets alongside Marx, Althusser, and Marcuse. He also began activist work with organized labor, building up experience in the body with other people, for other people. I think that this is a specific type of embodiment and one that has had a lasting influence on his work. He moved east to New York in 1999 for a job with the Labor Institute, where he still works to this day, in collaboration with United Steelworkers, the National Institute for Environmental Health Science, National Day Laborers Organizing Network, and Northwest Tribes, on educational training projects that involve environmental and labor justice, health and safety culture transformation. When he arrived in New York, he said in an interview that he had an absolute, in quotes, absolute glut of experience, organizational experience, languages, attitudes, perspectives on labor justice issues, end quote. That glut fueled his early books, including Platform, published by Atelos, which he has said he could have written twice. He began working with other poets and artists on performances, working toward a series of performance poems that were gathered in Collapsible Poetics Theater, which won the National Poetry Series and was published by Fence in 2008. Jason Boog notes, and quotes, that it reads like an avant-garde training manual, crammed with diagrams, numbered instructions, commands, and surgically precise language. In one poem, Toscano orders his players to follow a technically complex set of rules, teaching his reader to channel 5 different embedded voices in each stanza, end quote. The polyvocal bloom in Collapsible Poetics Theater gathers the tendrils that had been nascent in earlier books, the slippage of voice, the lack of stability, both political and performative, and incredibly timely, I think, anticipating a dislocation that the digital age has only intensified. After 16 years in New York, he moved to New Orleans, where he is an active and key figure in the city's poetry community. He runs the Splice Reading Series and is on the board of the directors of the New Orleans Poetry Festival. I hear his annual pool party is the pinnacle of the gathering. The poems have shifted with the geography, and his impressive new book, Whitman, Cannonball, Pueblo, aims to engage the relationship between the American empire, the Hispanic world, and global complexities of late-stage capitalism. The book is divided into 4 sections, mixing allegory and fable, mind-bending sounds and images, at times hilarious, at times terrifying, to shake open the conversation, to shake open the assumptions around the blurred language of commerce and culture. and national linguistic identity. The American scene feels awfully small in Toscano's visionary book, in which he calls for Hispano-American poetics open to larger conversations about language, global politics, and poetics. The poems drive hard, sustained often in couplets and tercets, ricocheting from pop culture to industrial mechanics. For Toscano, the poem is never any one thing. He writes in the book, "We can see how the gorgeous poems from the gorgeous poem factories roll out hot, ready to be molded into walls of empire about to crumble." Please welcome Rodrigo Toscano to Segue.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to see everybody, so many friends, so many wonderful people. Thank you for having me. So I'm going to be reading from newer work than Whitman Cannonball Puebla. This work is from Stumbles and Surges. It's 100 sonnets that I completed in the summer, started in January. And they're sonnets, they're 14 lines a piece, and each line is 10 syllables, every single one. And it ranges through a series of sections. The first section is of polis. The second section is what it felt like. The third is the praxis. And the fourth is working the quirk. So I'm going to start with some sections from Of Polis. Rubber bands. Bag of rubber bands in basic colors. A child is born. Somebody's counting stars. Is anything ever at all random? Slight differences in body temperature. Yellow ring around turquoise corona, adjusting to sunlight through southern oaks. Needs of sucklings of all species calling. Integrate all that is an old impulse. Watch the impulse carry the day away. Sharing drinks, sharing meals, sharing laughter. Someone can talk about empires for years. Someone's better at tripping on nations, while another hunkers down on classes. Bag of rubber bands of various sizes. Imperium 2. But English itself was losing power while reclaiming dominion over us. So everything went from weird to weirder as declamation became all the rage. Just as level-read cosplaying took hold, everyone an expert, an ethics crank, a shoeless pilgrim trudging up a hill, a healer, a shrink, slag heaps of counsel in English against itself, there to help. But it was bestial bards who turned it down as pillars of jargon came crashing down. There, among the broken copes of statecraft, a sort of salvage poetics sprung forth, one that functionaries couldn't quite quash. Freak flag. Something about femurs and elections and a pelvis bone and debt bondage schemes and a skull and time management trackers. What else? Yes, the billions for client states and 10 metacarpals and stock buybacks. But let these loose objects lie for a bit. Notice thoughts ramble without a thinker, every single word its own chronicler. Then fly your freak flag, pick up the pieces, build the body politic here and now, something about post-empire survival, the gold gloss on everything chipping off, something about hardy minds holding fast and high-tech oligarchs in cuffs and chains. No art. Fixed stationary lives with core duties, receiving scant attention. Some try and elevate the details to an art. But art has never existed as such. It's always been painting, sculpture, music, and of course, dance, poetry, drama, film. There's no art inside of any of those arts, no art to fulfilling one's livelihood. Art is a bauble of capitals. Art, if that makes any sense, avoided space, an allocation that can be traded, like the valleys of stationary lives. The details vary, but batch rate supply. Also, no art to sonnets, just sonnets. American gloves. But first, let's talk canals of Panama. Laborers entombed on moss, adding mass. Okay, done with that. Let's talk colleges. Or do y'all prefer indigo, sugarcane? Alrighty, so moving on, your Insta. Do we think allergies can be your thing? Slap a tear off on Parisian poets? Okay, now we're talking about your boots. Great Wall of China you'll never stomp on? Who are you? Actually, no, what are you? Balloon shrieking, whizzing about in loops? Something of a diplomat, we presume. Yeah, the Suez Canal docks can be locked. This workshop will focus on sexy gloves. New actors. Self-contained little word worlds don't exist, but let's act like they do for a moment. Let's haul in actors from the big outside, wash-ups like free speech, balance of powers. Let them act out a line or two. Okay, cut. What in hell's bells is all this? They don't even recognize each other. It's all stammering and stomping about. Let's 86 these fools, crack cinema. And now, nobody's in here like before. But it's not like we're safe. There's no life here. This modernist shell, could it ever hold? Let's ditch it. Let's roam about. Let's meet folks. Who? These lively ones? They're called the chatties. Cognizance. Oh my God. It's the Phoenicians again. Rowing into view, tasked with metaphor, the OGs of trade and commerce. Lingo. Setting up the scene nicely for Romans, peeking over their hills replete with shields. They'd harp on the vanities of the world, Roman bards, conquest speaking pieties. In the rigid customs of their culture, who's a slave to whom, who's acting proper, surely made things worse. And so tragedy, wrapped in comedy, held their attention. Which brings us to President McKinley, an old-style imperialist way to be, revived in our time, but for scattered ears. New stance. Quiet punches in the gut, quiet pain, quiet soothing from intimates, or worse, no seething from no one, an added punch, quietly endured, straight from the rule book. You could make this place plenty socialist, but that's against the prime directive, so make of it what you can. Perhaps purdy, straight from the rule book, elementally the magic of half quiet, from the gut and out the butt. Sorry for the crudeness. Sorry for the lack of decorative poise. Sorry for the gong of the working class. Sorry, but not really, for the new stance, like a Scott Joplin rag when you need it. Salvage nation. Like a J.S. Bach fugue when you need it, the comrade's power for staying quiet in the face of grandiose fabrications, calumny of despoiling the people, the alleged mandate, only increased until the moment to speak, like thunder, to the matter at hand. Who gets to thrive? And never swerving from that, but instead weaving in lines of cause and consequence, point by point, on top of points, harmonic, conceiving transition for what's to do, tying up loose ends, leaving behind clues, paths to even higher resolution in the forging of the salvage nation. Cat lady. Roiling poltergeist, the lady inside the nation, welling up, about to burst, but hasn't yet. As ever, this cursed tense, unnerving these cotton mather offshoots, remainders of politickers. At dusk, the moon sliding down the earth's curvature, murkiness oozing spells, charming the hours into very targeted speech acts. Hey, Eve whispers at balmy sunrise. Adam, you're so protective. You're like my dad. Is that what you want to hear, Adam? Huh? Do you want to screw me, Adam? No, yeah, of course you do. Of course you do. Oh, yeah, everybody wants to screw the cat girl. Over that hill. Over that hill were another people, and we learned they did many things better, and many among us didn't like that. And some of us tried to stymie those folks, but over the hill, people forged on, just went through their thing, striving to improve so much, they started helping other folks, building dams, railway lines, and hospitals. And that made some of us even more mad, so much we forged a whole language for mad, and it told us to topple what we'd built. And when things started to look real shitty, we turned neighbor on neighbor to find fault. Some of us, though, We're just eager to learn. Beignets. Beignets fluffed into shape deserve a line, just like the People's Congress in China. Do we have any objections so far? Okay. Who's doing the fluffing and frying, and who's caking them beignets in sugar, powdery mounds into happy gullets? The farming machines and its live helpers, and Jack Boudreau and Leticia Garza. 600 million pulled from poverty, from neighborhood clubs to regional hubs. The Congress responsive to the demos. Jack on the brink of living in his car, Leticia on the lookout for agents. And the kiddos deserve a million lines. Ceasefires. We thought the Grand Canyon was paradise, or not paradise, but filled with wonder, until the ceasefires, every single one. We gasped, mouths open, at a loss for words. Yellowstone and the Costa Maya sucked compared to these ceasefires, every last one. We need something more than wonder, we thought. We need effing peace, you gorgons, listen, and so forth. Life was better than before, the very second after those rare sights, and we felt it. Everybody felt it, in their gut, their bones, in their throbbing hearts. And as clouds passed over that green canyon, we simply took a breath, first one in years. It's Sunday. She wants to shut it all out, the violence, the arrogance of rulers, that screeching, never-ending rattle of empty words. She wants to run, run, run purposefully towards a verdant valley of happy souls, or to some demon lover by moonlight. She wants to want openly, without traps, as on a desert of red sand, naked, in the cool dawn of undulant mercy. She wants to make bread or write a novel, be detailed, artful, and free of worry, like a seashore foam fizzing out at sundown. She wants, most of all, to stop the wanting and blend into a vintage shop's blouse rack. Okay, so that was of Polis, and this is from the section. These are just a few selections. This one's for the section's called "What It Felt Like." Smelling Bermuda. Pump gas while tripping on the blue bayou. Yes, looks like you're a political tweet bombed. Yesterday you paid 2 outstanding bills. Satiety from minor tasks is building. Add intrusive thoughts about Bermuda. How high exactly that plunge from those bluffs. All right, now green tones tinting the bayou, sun behind cloud, the pump does its click bump. That tweet, on second thought, wasn't that bad. All it said was, history is so back. Territory and trade battles by bots. Gray tints now descend over the bayou. Tomorrow, you'll pay 3 outstanding bills. Quite likely, you'll never smell Bermuda. The sun came up. The sun came up, as they say, and it did. And little aches and pains got to business, tailbone to scapula and back calling, and a text buzzing and a full bladder. It's you weighing in on worldwide matters. U.S. steel not for sale to Japan. Good. Catalan separatists losing steam. Good. Railway through Yucatan finished. Good. Tex wants to know if Zoom today's good. Bad. Voiding urine in 3 installments. Bad. Ball of foot buzzing trip by massage. Bad. They also say, let your eyes drink the sun, that it snaps you out of your sneaky dream states till the moon hits you straight and personal. National Nook. From that nook, you can watch the pageantry under the covers, hunkered in pitch dark, a Nebraska of your highest ideals, a Boston of your basest impulses. You can see it all without much fussing, creep among the cattails of Delaware, strut by that obelisk in Washington. Work that sucker. High-five your selfie mates. In there, you can gobble up the West Wing in suit and tie, spitting out the wishbones onto the Potomac as the sun sets. A San Jose of your screen addiction, a Nevada of your secret defense. You can have it all with a bit of oomph. These lands. Okay, so Monday morning, God is dead, like ancestors and dine-in Pizza Huts. Flashy things to say. What's drab is Tuesday, backflowing into Monday, while Wednesday portends even weightier mysteries, like Taco Bell weekly menu updates. But Monday is Monday's stated purpose, glaringly murky like Tuesdays, Wednesdays, an abyss of no meaning at midweek. Amidst the stark absence of mass violence, thank God, wormification in these lands, for tomatoes ripening by Thursday, for the return of that one-legged crow on Friday, pecking the past week to bits. Wise poet. She had become a church of digressions, just at the time when digressions went out along with high-rise jeans and the tarot. In other words, she had become young old, like the United States and the vape craze, and everything Obama and brunches. Amazingly, brunches sputtered out too. In the occasional back to nature, a quick rub out along a briar patch didn't purify the mind anymore. So she decided to let empire speak openly through her in three distinct modes. As against-ish, and part of it. Better put, she stopped casting spells herself. Another New Orleans sonnet, chronic, literally everything, okay? A trash bin stuffed with literary mags, a pensive girl at the end of the bar, a cat slinking under rickety stools, a notepad crammed with illegible scrawl. Chronic, runaway fancies, pulsing ache, shocks of optimism, zings of numbness. One dumbass metaphor puts it like this: the spine of society out of whack. While the pensive girl slides out of the bar, as the slinky cat rambles out of sight, as the lonesome notepad sloshily roars, as the mags snuggle into their landfill. It's chronic, all right, the whole effing deal. Aliens 8. They've been done landing for 6 decades now, and 2 congressmen from the cornflakes belt now lead the charge, sources leaking sources. Abductions are up. Trust in God is down. Weapons spending is up. The arts are down. Low-rise quarter-eyes rising for decades. How high can they go before they go low? From the avocado toast coast to Maine, from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of New Spain. Would you say it's a cover-up? Are you suggesting foreign actors? Senator, try these on if you could, please. Can you dance in those for decades with ease? They've been done about to be done bursted. Roman coin. What's in a Roman coin? Should we shudder? Or do we remain calm as eye surgeons and decipher the era? Should we act, make something of that hubbub, derive thought, or do nothing, just stare at it listless, burning through our coin, metallic, virtual, adding raw bulk to the dwindling empire, living in resistance mode for chunk change? Ode on a Grecian urn chalked out by Keats, where you trip on some relic for today, unable to speak, but having to speak biographic bits, griefs, flights of fancy. That is, do Roman coins make chic pendants? Should they be featured wearing little else? Placards. But what's to see at the Dickinson House? And what's going to happen at the Brecht House? And all the other damn houses out there? The fucking Faulkner, whatever, abode. The Hemingway hovel, Hart Crane's old flat. The rock where Lord Byron penned some nasties. The cold room where Juna Barnes wrote slowly. A hot room where Audre Lorde wrote briskly. Simone de Beauvoir lost her shit right there. Frank O'Hara stripped down Rimbaud right there. That's the cliffside that Wordsworth once forgot. Spencer enslaved Irishmen in this vale. That's the pew where Ansel Dua got real. This tub is where some asswipe wrote placards. Glaciers. Say one thing that's true, like the sun burns hot, and by that act, the whole world is lit up. But that doesn't mean meaning flows smoothly. But let's give it a whirl. Glaciers don't fuck. Well, that's a relief. That many less cares. That is, if glaciers were like nation states in the pull of one empire or another, national glacial culture on the prowl, sometimes slowly, other times less slowly, they'd have their own poetry and standards. And of course, standard breakers, chunks of ice wandering in the middle of nowhere, a piece of something true, super horny, a bit desperate, outlandish, but on point. Poem accepted. No magazine wants Poets of Shenzhen, same for its companion, O Monterey, two poems on far-off poetry scenes we know nothing about nor ever will, but wonder out loud, what's afoot, what's new, what forms of expression are now surging, what characters stand out there, what's their deal? Rumors about our scene compared to theirs, we compile in compact form just for them, or actually for the public at large. As far as poetry goes, there are cities like Chicago, LA, Oakland, Philly, scenes held together by a twisting thread, self-portraits at the center of who cares. The series, peek at the screen. It's 2050, where they spent their youthful years, a Bronze Age. There was a bar, an old vocab, someone. The street looks about the same. A public. It's a reading. It's a demo. It's them. The problems of diction, a silver age. That building wasn't. New nation was born, where they spent their last years. A vocab shift. Minor truths still roam the alleys. All smiles. Here's the pivot point. No, here's the launch point. It wasn't about you. A golden age. There's always another bar. Nation croaked. How'd it go? Who was there? Who rattled what? Alongside generations of striped cats. Weirdos. Poem took about 56 seconds to read. It was towards the back of the collection. Just 21 people made it that far, and 12 of those merely skimmed over it. Of the 9 who spent 9 minutes on it, just 2 read it closely and 1 3 times. That lasted about 4 minutes and change compared to the 6 hours writing it, and the 2 hours submitting the piece. Living in the slush pile for 7 months. It took 30 hours to fish it out and about 5 hours to rank the thing, finally pleasing 3 functionaries, the editor, the scribe, and 1 weirdo. Brazen soul. The doorman greets the woolen coats again. The sidewalk's best days ahead, blasted off. Last glimpse of Central Park, plane lurches left, literature at 35,000 feet. Are you still bored with the 3 dimensions? On the 23rd floor, down the hallway, in that sickening beige 1-bedroom flat, you wrote, "Flowers of Autumn in Bangor," to the beats of techno jackhammer blows, thinking you'd entered into the 5th dimension. Meanwhile, more woolen coats went in and out. The line to the plane's toilet just doubled. But no matter the color of your flat, your piece is lauded for brazen soul. Factoids. Beneath the Earth's crust are giant diamonds. Blue, they think, the size of a human brain, but nobody's gone past 8 miles below, or less than 10% of that layer, on the way to the mantle where they are, presumably, these rocks that would thrill us, or not at all, or maybe for a day, though unlikely we'll ever get to them. But the factoid has already been mined. It's been cut to perfection and polished, and is being mounted onto a sonnet. And what could be cheaper than a sonnet? Maybe gift paper blowing in the wind, a dead butterfly swirling in a pond. The new bungledom. Now that your eyes' taste buds are pure plastic, now that your word hog bender's bellied up, now that your inner voice has run out, now that shrieking voids have you in tatters, now you're ready for the new bungledom, an essential state of being, sufferance. The new bungledom is like a teen hideout, but from 50 years ago. Let's go there. Here, nothing acquired wings, nothing took flight, everything stood as it stood, all was fair. The scrawls on the concrete remain, jumbled. A mild attempt at dejumbling seems right. A strong effort at rejumbling seems right. A wild-ass piss on all efforts seems right. Bywater boho. If you cut those bangs just right, you'll prosper. If your caps flip just a bit, you'll prosper. Those rain boots over thighs, philosophize. Those flannels 3 in a row, legislate. We thought garters couldn't sprint. We were wrong. We thought spiked belts couldn't crawl. Wrong again. That rack of orphan vestments kind of stinks. That dummy in new attire kind of winks. If you think about it, black jeans scream death. If you hanker pink shorts, you get lime socks. A good 3 sport a lion's mane to brunch. A good 12 rock an invisible crown. First time we peeped, your tail was on the backside. Last time we peeped, it was on the front side. Okay, and these last 2. Downriver. In procession, white swamp boots, ruby pants, blue flannels, silver scarves, emerald skirts, queen of all literature and of the sea, dukes of dull mud and of the sheeniest, master of the revels, pray you help us. Remember to forget what we recall of these anxious years. Do us a songlet. The princess of drained out marshes begs you. The isle of the disappeared, how now, bard? Have you nothing in the way of ripped shorts, something of the soil of this place, or snakes? Black cloud thunder rumbling, that pleases well. Pickups, pickups. The king's ice chest, light rain because it is hot. The hell? Okay. The last one is the title piece of the whole manuscript. It's called Stumbles and Surges. Tell a troth is what George Herbert advised. And it seems that by relating one troth, a single troth, unique structures arise, fresh light radiating through the windows. But are you really in the stream of being? Brack pokes in a firm but friendly manner, pressing folks to embrace contradiction, prime mover of all historic motion. Because I could not stop for death, she wrote, sounding a little grim, creaking forward, adding cheery highlights at every pause. Dickinson, exhorting to ride death's edge. Those 3 and many more stoked these urges, 100 days of stumbles and surges. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Dante. I work with Stephen over at Nightboat Books. I have the pleasure of introducing Mónica de la Torre. I like Monica's poems a lot. She knows that. I like her approach to making her poems a lot. And I also like a lot how her approach to making her poems sort of both shapes and is shaped by her approaches to other poems, into other places, into other people. I like a lot how her poetics is a social practice. I like how when I read and listen to these poems, it's like I'm having this conversation that she's also having, not just with language and with a poetic lineage, but also with all of these strange systems that sort of claim to structure our lives, like the public transportation infrastructure that made me late. I'm sorry. But we had a conversation about her latest book, Pause the Document, when it first came out a few months ago. So we were sort of talking about the project, how it started, and she told me about all of these euphemistic pauses, those are her words, that were all around her. So there was the pandemic, of course, this pause in all of our social arrangements and also political ones, the promise of a ceasefire, and also more personal pauses, how illness pauses what a person can and cannot do. So this latest collection is all of those pauses. We're asked to pay attention to them. They're all very distilled and very potent. But I'm drawn to what she does with those pauses because she doesn't just document them. It's not just about documentation. She writes, I've often been tempted to engage in documentary modes, but then I'll go down a rabbit hole from which I can only escape by turning the whole enterprise on its head. And I like that she does turn the whole enterprise of documentary poetics on its head, not only to kind of point out its pretensions, but really just to see what comes out the other side. And what comes out the other side is really strange. It's all of these trees and theorems and trees that become theorems, and theorems that show us that the world around us is really only solid when you look at it from afar, from a distance. And it's the poet's imperative, the title's imperative to pause and to collapse that difference. And not just that, but then to play around, which she does so wonderfully. Mónica de la Torre is the author of several full-length collections of poems, most recently Pause the Document. I'll have it for sale right over there, right after this reading. As an editor, she's co-edited several anthologies, I think most recently Women in Concrete Poetry, from Primary Information. She is also the recipient of a Foundation for the Contemporary Arts C.D. Wright Award, New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowship, Creative Capital Grant, and I heard a rumor that she's also presenting tomorrow at Pioneer Works, 1 p.m., the first Sundays. Yeah, so maybe I will see you all tomorrow, but it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Mónica de la Torre.
What a beautiful introduction. Did you memorize that, or was that improvised? My God. Very impressive. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. It's really great to be here. I was told to be a foot away from the mic, but maybe I'm... That's good. That's good? Okay. There we go. Great. So I'm going to read some poems from Pause the Document, but I'm also going to put the book on pause because I've been reading a lot from it. So I'm going to read some prose at the end. I will guide you through this, but I'll begin with some of the poems and Pause the Document. And thank you, Segue. Thank you, Nightboat. Thank you, Dante, Stephen, and all of you. Really, there's so much you could be doing, and you are here, and that is magical. Thank you. Felisa is a poem. Greedy for blossoms, euphoria at the winds snapping a branch for me to redeem, I let shadow trample the buds. Later, when I wound the pit of an avocado, it bleeds before my eyes. Between ages, we run out of eggs. Chronobiology's downside. My still life's. Play mad, she instructs. Hágase la loca. Push the language through the hourglass. Theorem of sorts. So this theorem is in art it's a work on velour or what's the velour or terciopelo. ¿Cómo se dice terciopelo? What you're wearing. Velvet, thank you. Yes. So it's a work on velvet that often is stenciled. So that is what this theorem is. Theorem of sorts. We admire adults for not acting like children, meaning we don't have to clean up after them, while we spend at least half of a life trying to find ways to exceed the edges of shapes that cannot be found. At the dinner table, he brings up the guy who does these beautiful, magical dioramas, micro-grated Parmesan cheese dangling from the dinged edge of a bowl covered in oil. Later that week, folding pages at the art school keeps us occupied. Notes are taken and much is said while repetition begins fielding itself. What kind of bird chirps potato chips? Here, the most common sightings are of American goldfinches and cardinals, migratory and non-migratory, respectively. The latter mostly male and so territorial, they'll attract their own reflection on occasion. You won't find the difference between a peaceful being and being peaceful on differencebetween.net. Other approaches are requisite, body scans. If your heartbeat can't be found under the medical gown, the shutdowns become emotional for you. This is the likely end to a year we want to forget, or the one forgetting itself as it is coming to an end. Except that it isn't. Ongoingness has its way of keeping on, not even when it all stops, since the so-called ending folds itself into the ever-developing story, begging the question, is it airless, the POV? Who sees the narrator? Is this relatable, and on whose terms? The proposal involves switching mediums. I will play a faculty member at the art school on whose faculty I am serving, folding myself as a fictional character into a true story. In the vicinity, the charm of hummingbirds, murder of crows, and identity taxation. Repetition, fielding itself again, reading against icons, a flexible field trip to nowhere. When one painter speaks to another painter, I know that to be fully in this won't ever be available to me either, since none of us are exhibitionists. The poem speaks in signs, and the painting on velvet sucks the light out of the room, yet somehow we manage to communicate. As for the empty speech bubbles on the walls, they display a variety of shapes, all very talkative. So I'm going in and out of the book because there are poems that relate, but that came after. And so if the book had been published later, I might have included this poem, but I didn't because I wrote after. The Matrix is Silence is a poem. I step back so I can circle the object, see it from behind, from below. The object in question here, a sentiment, voiced amid chirps and squeals at a kiddie birthday party held aptly at a gymnasium. Said tenderly, it stung, redolent of childlessness. Obstacle course, tug of war, the afternoon's cathartic activity, alternating teams, kids versus kids, moms versus kids, dads versus kids, moms versus dads. I join anyway. I'll role play, clown around, reproduce authoritative pronouncements. En esta casa debe haber orden y silencio. It's been and gone. This group convenes at Off Paradise to talk about the objects in the room in connection to metaphysics, a poem by Wisława Szymborska. The idea of putting something else in relation to what's already in the room comes up. Someone points to the floorboards grooves left by light machinery, then to that which could appear as equally subtle artistic intervention, the exposed pipes in the room, escaping our attention like relative pronouns until something's off. They speak, I jot bits down, but I can't retrace the circuitry of my thoughts then, in the same irreversible order. If, out of the blue, I started speaking a poem, I offer, they'd have to reckon with its flitting presence, the way you acknowledge the objects you walk around to avoid bumping into them, especially if misplaced, or how you almost did not notice you're tuning out the round, rust-chested American robin's bright gurgling announcement of spring, which, like all birdsong, is untranscribable and the sole reason why birds elude literary authorities. Others keep circling back to the first question, to OOO, fixating on the dynamic between text and the sleepwalkers, non-functional objects that, like manifestos, aspire to transcend their physical properties while withdrawing into themselves at the same time. How different sculpture from picture, window, or poem, from third object or prop. A general ooh is heard when someone speaks of vibratory weirdness. My scribbles in an alphabet simplified over thousands of years so that it may be learned by 5-year-olds, transpersonal memory. And then there was this poem that I wrote ages ago, which I didn't bring, yes, I did bring it. And it didn't make it into my previous book, published by Nightboat as well, Repetition 19, but those who know that book know that I was dealing a lot with equivalence. And in this poem, which is called equivalence, I was trying to wring as much meaning out of the terms with which we designate family members. Equivalence. My child is my mother. There is a perpetual tug of war between the child and my mother and the mother and my child. My spouse is not father to my child. The man who is lover to his mother, he too is childless, having been son to his grandfather but not brother to his mother or son. The self-evidence of terms designating family ties masks their entanglements. Is it folklore, the assumption that a man will choose a lover over his children and that a mother her children over her lover? In this, the man and I, we are equivalent. We each have our records. Return to psychogeography. Funny, I wasn't thinking of communicating in a language other than this one, but here I am, feeling formally restless and leaving traces. I can't get to it right now, so I'll switch back and forth if it's okay. In the spirit of the diagrammatic, sitting maskless under a blooming tree at a coffee shop. Not a European copper beach, there's no room for such majesty in this enchanted catastrophe. He was speaking about the word's disobedience, about how poets work by not working. Meanwhile, the world's machinery was running its course, when even shadows peter out. The possible N-words in a looping poem, all related to nutrient broths, nanoparticles, and mRNA. Not surprisingly, it ended up turning into an unfinished anti-Sestina. Before February's disorientation, there were family pictures in November. You were shown the future of fitness on mirror.com. As with all mirror reflections, the image was flipped, a translation. The future's only visible in hindsight. No, not last night. In the afternoon, when she warned us that things would be getting intense. The light box announced a trend watch in all caps. Under it, the same unhoused woman from last night, her belongings in plastic bags spread out around her. The underground is the only true measure of the grid. Another incident derails the day again. Describe the incident. An occurrence of an action or situation that is a separate unit of experience. So it takes you out of the flow? Something like that, yes, although it is actually woven deeply into the day's fabric, but still manages to feel isolated from everything, unlike a current. What's your currency? No crisis. Is that the cruel optimist in you speaking? Absurd. What's for breakfast? I take care of you. It's a sign of respect. Unrequited. Mutually so. Bad, better than best. That's what Rodrigo had suggested. The reference to Beckett was obvious, still he thought the connection was brilliant. Quería que me volviera más mala. When John spoke of Rodrigo, I thought of peacocks. That makes two Rodrigos then. Me lo dijo un pajarito. A little birdie told me, back when birds of the resplendent type could talk. Epic commute, and still the continuous loop of the present. Such were my non-musical subtitles for Richard's Psalms for the End of the World. 90 more seconds to go. So that Rodrigo was this Rodrigo, actually, a long time ago, back in the day. It's so great to read with you, Rodrigo. That was a beautiful reading. Okay, so I'm going to read some of the fiction, or not fiction, prose, some fiction that I've been writing as proof of the fact that it's not all like all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. I have been writing this, but I rarely share it. So it's a project. All you need to know for this is that the premise is that there's someone who's writing about certain things, episodes, moments in Mexican mid-century modernism. And the person who's writing this has been studying a hotel that J. Paul Getty built in Acapulco in 1957, the year that he was named the richest man of the world. So that's all you need to know. And also that this person is writing a dispatch, including some of this research, to the person who commissioned it. And the person who commissioned it is Florian. Subject: beyond the definition of rapid intensification. Florian, I was grabbing a coffee on my way to the library about to answer your text message when the following notification from the New York Times flashed on my phone screen. Otis, a catastrophic hurricane, cuts off communications with Acapulco. I almost dropped my phone, kept reading. Forecasters warned of a nightmare scenario of destructive winds, flooding, and mudslides into the southern Mexican states of Guerrero and Oaxaca. Soon after, a flurry of messages and links started popping up in the family group chat. In one of them, newscasters were saying that the storm had become a Category 5 hurricane so suddenly earlier in the morning that not even the president had updates to share in his mañanera, the epically long press conferences with which he kicked off each morning. That's how cut off the city was. The president himself had no information. Morning talk show host kept repeating. Someone forwarded a link to a video of an emergency room whose glass windows had been blasted by the storm. Patients wrapped in thermal blankets were seen trying to get out of their cots. Palm trees rocked back and forth violently, whiplashing furiously as if possessed by evil spirits. On the main oceanfront boulevard, La Costera, a gutted hotel, El Presidente, which I remembered from back in the day when the city was relatively safe and you could stroll about day and night. Amid surrounding rubble, McDonald's golden arches stand victorious in the video. Another begins with shots of Ursat's Mayan glyphs in the driveway outside the Hotel Princess, now called Mundo Imperial. It once neighbored the Pierre Marqués, owned by Getty, but recently became part of the same conglomerate. The camera zooms out to the hotel's main building, shaped like an Aztec pyramid. The rooms line the periphery of the structure and surround a central hollow. The video was shot from one of the top floors and focuses on the ground floor and lobby area, where there used to be an incongruous indoor palapa bar, of which I have a few memories. More than once, my father told us the story of me as a kid drinking a Coke so fast there that I proceeded to vomit it immediately after finishing it. Do I remember his retelling the story, or do I actually remember the scene? The hotel was the epitome of luxury back then. We never stayed at it. I suppose that when we went there, we pretended we were guests to crash the pool and beach area. Perhaps our limited consumption at the bar was the price of entry. Or maybe we're just there to visit my father's friends and his family, since they might have had a house in the complex adjacent to the hotel's golf course. It's quite possible, too, that my father bribed the security personnel that allowed us entry and secured some cushy beach towels so that we would blend in. My mind's eye toggles back and forth between flashbacks from the past and the onslaught of pictures and videos I continued downloading onto my phone. I remember there going as a 16-year-old with some schoolmates and staying with my best friend Adriana, which was at her house, which was also in the adjacent housing complex. Two sisters who were about a year apart and were also in my high school, as well as their mom, who didn't seem much older than her eldest daughter, were part of the group as well. The three of them were as good-looking as they were arrogant. They had a Norman last name that to them must have justified their air of superiority. I never liked them. One night, we told the adults we'd be going to the beachfront restaurant bar, but instead got dressed up to go to the hotel's disco. Adriana and I were the first to enter it, only to surprise our Norman friend's mom, who was making out with a random guy on the dance floor. Nothing but broken glass, construction debris, mattresses, and torn apart indoor and outdoor furniture is visible on the ground level of the hotel in the video. It looks as if all the furniture inside the rooms had been sucked into a vortex at the center of the pyramid and then hurled violently to the ground. Even a car landed there, squished amidst piles of debris. Its scale so distorted by the magnitude of destruction, it looks like a miniature golf car. Someone is heard making a joke about the stranded vehicle, but nobody else populates the frame. Nobody had any word yet about the apartment in which we'd stayed the last 3 summers, or about Martha, the cook. We both had received diagnoses the same summer, so when we saw each other next, we compared boobs while getting into a conversation about the importance of women's self-reliance. She had told me about her divorce from an asshole of a macho, who she still described as a never-do-well. She was proud to have the deed to her house to her name in one of Acapulco's working-class neighborhoods up on the hills. Nobody forwarded videos of that part of the city yet. As soon as I got to the library, I remembered that very early photograph of Acapulco by Muybridge that I'd seen when researching Getty's Hotel. Almost automatically, I typed Acapulco into the research catalog search bar. The first result was incomprehensible to me. Acapulco by Christian Brandt. Perhaps it was a history of the city, I thought, but the only word I recognized in the blurb for the book in Swedish was Roman. I couldn't help but guess at a few terms. Medicine, yacht, novel. Some are at work, should, okay for zoning. I fed the text into Google Translate. Christian Brandt has published his 6th novel, Acapulco, which is a work of guilt and redemption. The work has been published by the publisher Kane and has the following designation: genre, general fiction. I'd never heard of this author. When I looked him up, the results included a study by someone who couldn't possibly be the same person. Its long title struck me as full of possibilities. Partial reconstruction of the trajectories of a discretely observed branching diffusion. Another result, less poetic but perhaps more helpful, indicated that Brandt is a writer who is part of the Swedish-speaking minority constituting 5% of Finland's population. What's with Acapulco? Now I was even more curious about this peculiar artifact. I went back to the Muybridge picture and learned that shortly after the trial that absolved him from murdering his wife's lover by firing a single pistol shot at point-blank range, he embarked on a photographic expedition of Mexico and Central America. The photo, which is in MoMA's collection, dates from 1875. Everything in it looks dwarfed, perhaps because of the scale of the low thatched roof constructions dotting the landscape, except for the almost bare hills of the Sierra Madre, clusters of palm trees here and there, and a white stucco church near the shoreline off in the distance. Only a few docked fishing boats sit still on the bay's placid waters. If you didn't know what you were looking at, no one could blame you for mistaking the bay for a lake. The picture was taken from the edge behind riprap, perhaps near the fort of San Diego built in the 17th century to protect the city from pirates, covering the shipments traveling to and from Manila to Europe through Acapulco. I kept looking at my computer screen as if I could penetrate the landscape that appears untouched by the Industrial Revolution, and discovered that doing this had palpably soothing effects on me. Perhaps it's that the pile of rocks in the foreground completes the open circumference traced by the hills in the background, which appear to ripple out into deeper plains, with at least 3 different ranges, each in a distinct hue and less tall than the one behind it. That the different topographical layers and even the hill shadows on the water are appreciable thanks to the sheer sensitivity to light seems to be the miracle that Muybridge wanted to capture in the frame. The sloping curves near abstraction softly caresses the gaze. It could be the photographic ancestor of Attila Adnan's serene paintings of Mount Tamalpais. But, better yet, the image exists outside time. Hollis Frampton says this in an essay on Muybridge from 1973. I kept going back to it since it gave me the exact words I didn't know I was looking for. Acapulco in it seemed outside the influence of entropy, the destroyer. I was almost done finishing it before the library closed. Instead of getting on the subway at 5th Avenue and 42nd, I walked over to Grand Central so I could grab a few items from the market near the station. There were crowds of people on the sidewalk, a lot of commotion, and people pulling out phones and recording who knows what. They must have spotted a celebrity, I thought. Oddly, the entrance to the station was shut, so I rushed over to the main entrance at Park and 42nd amid a sea of confused, harried people. All the doors to the station there had also been locked. I walked further east to the next entrance and spotted a group of cops with flex cuffs dangling from their belt loops. All the doors to the station but one were locked there as well. Inside, cops lined fences. that were meant to block people from entering the station unless they showed they were holding Metro North or Long Island Railroad tickets. I said I was going to the subway and they let me in. I asked a cop what was going on. Honestly, I don't know. I just got here, he said. Another one chimed in, a protest. The station couldn't have been quieter inside. The chaos was outside. Later that night, I found out it was a peaceful sit-in organized by Jewish Voices for Peace. They're criminalizing protests and trapping people inside Grand Central, 4 exclamation marks. I texted my husband, my heart's pounding, dictating a sequence of redundant exclamation points at the end of my naive phrase. Later that night, I learned that the publishers of Art Forum, where I read the Frampton essay on Muybridge, had just fired the magazine's editor for publishing the open letter in solidarity with the Palestinian people that we both signed. I'm sure you're familiar with the scandal now. I just wanted to put it all down, lest this discreetly observed branching diffusion becomes too muddled for us to be able to track its trajectory later on. If Muybridge's 1875 photograph of Acapulco is a marvel, and it is, it contains 2 contradictory planes. It simultaneously affirms time and denies it. You could say that about photography in general, I guess, but this one in particular makes me experience both planes so acutely it hurts. Yours, Mónica. Okay, and I'm going to end with a dream that could have been included in the book because I include a sequence of dreams, but I didn't. Here we go. It's titled, If Dreams Had Titles, for Rosemary Waldrop. I would call this one my condolences, despite the animated quality of the general mood. It came back to me as I was synchronizing my repetitions to the tune of Good Times during a workout that in a bygone era would have fallen under the rubric of calisthenics and now goes by the name that rings no less euphemistic. Everyone who makes an appearance in the dream is engrossed in an autobiographical thriller that reads like experimental poetry. It's by Keith Waldrop and is titled The Key or the Conduit. People hold copies of the book to their faces while walking around in a zombie-like trance. As if on cue, they pause at regular intervals and speak, alternating between raving about the book and lamenting the fact that he's no longer with us. By people, I mean the community at the art school I'm at, whose members started infiltrating my dreams shortly after my arrival on campus. The day of his big adios, in a windowless classroom and unaware of his passing, I'd mentioned the Waldrop's compilation of interviews, statements, alarms, and excursions titled Keeping the Window Open. Upon hearing the news, I turned to the volume, since I hadn't received instruction from him. To his inscrutable silence the few times I had visited. For portraits of the anecdotal variety, I returned to the installation of a chairlift in their home, which had the curious effect, Rosemary relayed, of providing enough of a boost for him to walk up the stairs. As it plays out in my mind, the scene is accompanied by echoes of a laughter formal in its absurdity, affirming artistry. Proof that energy transfers occur in any direction, forward and back in time, as when reading these lines in his poem, An Apparatus. The staircase effect supplies strong evidence for a subjective map. Eyes, mineral, as in a book of surrealist games. In place of a word picture, Kay's gift of a miniature collage by him set on a hot pink background, combining the reproduction of a thumbprint, a scrap of stationery decorated with a delicate floral pattern, and a numerical sequence abruptly interrupted. Later, I was sent a poem of Keith's, whose sentiment about death being strangely overrated was easy for me to share from this side of the grass, where the past is only one of our idioms. I continue to piece together the dream as I go on writing my condolence note. Snippets of the song's chorus keep getting dimmer and so short they could belong in any melody. Thank you.
Ella amará a otro hombre.